their defense station, their black ships moving like a plague across the stars. Admiral Krell watched the holographic display with growing dread as another red light blinked out. "Third outpost lost this week," his second-in-command said quietly. Krell's scaled skin tightened around his neck frill, a sign of extreme stress among Tarkashans. The Federation was losing, and losing badly. What had begun as border skirmishes had evolved into a full-scale invasion that threatened to overwhelm the entire quadrant. "The Council demands an update," said a voice from behind. Council Representative Mock stood in the doorway, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a nervous habit. "Tell them what they already know," Krell replied. "Our forces are outmatched. Our tactics are failing. The Void adapts to everything we throw at them." The command center of the Federation's flagship hummed with tense activity as officers from a dozen species worked frantically to coordinate what remained of their once proud defense fleet. Screens showed the scattered remnants of their forces retreating from yet another failed engagement. "There is one option we haven't discussed," Mox said cautiously. Krell turned sharply. "The humans?" "Absolutely not." "The Council has already voted to send the message," Mox replied, backing away slightly from the Admiral's imposing figure. "It was sent an hour ago." Krell's frill expanded fully now, a warning display that made junior officers flinch. "Have you forgotten what happened the last time we encountered their warships? 3 of our dreadnoughts destroyed in minutes." "That was 30 years ago," Mox countered. "And we fired first, remember." Krell couldn't argue with that historical fact. The first contact war with humans had been short and devastating, a terrible misunderstanding that led to unnecessary bloodshed. Since then, humans had largely kept to their own systems, building and expanding away from the galactic community. Far from this conversation, at the edge of human space, Captain Jack Reed sat in his command chair aboard the Thunderchild *. The massive warship drifted in the black, running silent as it patrolled the border regions. Reed was in his 40s, with deep lines etched around his eyes and gray streaking his once dark hair. 20 years of space service had hardened him, but not broken his core principles. "Captain, we're picking up something strange," said his communications officer. "It's a Federation distress call." Reed straightened. "Federation? They never come this far toward our space." "The message mentions the Void Armada," the officer continued. "They're requesting assistance from any available ships." The bridge fell silent. Everyone knew about the Void, a mysterious force that had appeared at the galaxy's edge years ago. Humans had yet to encounter them directly, but intelligence reports painted a grim picture. "What are our orders regarding Federation contact?" asked the first officer. Reed's face darkened. "Standing orders are clear. Maintain isolation except in cases of direct human interest." He stood and walked to the main view screen, staring at the stars. His father had fought in the First Contact War. Reed himself had grown up listening to stories about Federation ships and their strange alien crews. There was bad blood there, decades of mistrust. "Sir," the communications officer pressed. Reed made a decision. "Plot an intercept course. Prepare the ship for possible combat operations." His first officer stepped closer. "Captain, this directly contradicts standing orders." "The Admiralty." "The Admiralty isn't here," Reed cut him off. "If the Void is as dangerous as our intelligence suggests, then this is a human interest. We can't let them gain a foothold in this sector." As the Thunderchild powered up its massive engines, Reed knew he might be starting something that couldn't be stopped. His career would likely end over this decision, but some things mattered more than promotions or protocols. Sending response to the distress call, the communications officer reported. The massive human warship turned and accelerated toward danger. The Federation was about to get help they hadn't expected and perhaps didn't entirely want. purple and blue swirled across view screens as ships maneuvered desperately against the advancing Void Armada. Their black vessels absorbed light rather than reflected it, making them appear as moving holes in space itself. Admiral Krell stood rigid as tactical displays showed the inevitable. His remaining ships fought bravely, but it wouldn't be enough. The Void Armada had already broken through in 3 sectors. "Sir," called out a young officer, unknown signature detected entering the combat zone. Krell's attention snapped to the new data. "More Void reinforcements." "No, sir. The energy pattern is unlike anything in our database." "Wait." The officer's voice faltered. "Sir, it matches old records from the First Contact War." A chill spread through the command center. Veterans straightened, eyes widening with recognition. "Human," someone whispered. The massive warship tore through space as it exited hyperspace, its hull gleaming with a metallic sheen unlike the ceramic compounds favored by Federation engineers. The vessel was angular, aggressive in design, bristling with weapon systems that made Federation analysts nervous. "The ship identifies itself as the Thunderchild *", reported the communications officer. "They're offering assistance." Krell's frill flattened against his neck, a sign of supreme displeasure among Tarkashians. "We requested aid from their government, not a lone warship playing hero." Before anyone could respond, the Void forces noticed the newcomer. 3 enemy destroyers broke formation, moving to intercept the human vessel. "We should warn them," suggested Krell's second-in-command. "Why?" Krell replied coldly. "Let the Void discover what we learned the hard way about human warships." Aboard the Thunderchild *, Captain Reed assessed the battlefield with practiced eyes. Tactical analysis. "Federation forces are collapsing on all fronts," his tactical officer reported. "The Void ships appear to use some form of energy absorption technology. Their hulls are drinking in weapons fire." Reed nodded. "And now they've noticed us. 3 ships on approach." "Your orders, sir?" asked his first officer. Reed stood from his command chair. "Let's introduce ourselves properly. Weapons free, defensive pattern Omega. Show them what human engineering can do." The Thunderchild * surged forward, its engines flaring bright against the nebula's gases. As the Void ships launched their first attack, something unexpected happened. The human vessel's hull briefly shimmered with a field that bent light around it, making its exact position difficult to track. Federation observers watched in stunned silence as the human warship executed maneuvers that should have torn it apart. It moved like a predator, aggressive and precise. "Are they insane?" muttered an officer on Krell's bridge. "They're charging directly into the enemy formation." The Thunderchild * fired, not with the energy weapons the Federation relied upon, but with something far more primitive and startlingly effective. Kinetic weapons that tore through the Void ship's energy-absorbing defenses. The first enemy vessel shuddered as massive rounds punched through its hull. "They're using physical projectiles," said a Federation weapons officer in disbelief. "Hyper-accelerated metal slugs." Krell watched as the human warship danced between enemy fire, its defensive systems unlike anything in Federation arsenals. Where Federation shields glowed and pushed back against attacks, the human vessel seemed to redirect energy, bleeding it off into space in controlled bursts. "The humans have been busy during their isolation," Krell observed grimly. The Thunderchild * disabled 1 Void ship, destroyed another, and sent the 3rd retreating to the main fleet. Captain Reed's voice then came across all Federation channels. "This is Captain Jack Reed of the Earth vessel Thunderchild *. We noticed you could use some help. Request coordination of defensive efforts." Admiral Krell stared at the screen, conflicting emotions warring within him. Pride demanded he reject this unexpected aid. Duty to his people required he accept it. "Open a channel," he finally ordered. The battle for the Moebius Nebula was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, the tide showed signs of turning. The Void Armada had encountered something new. Humanity had entered the fray. Approached. Captain Reed stood at attention, flanked by his senior officers. He had dressed in full formal uniform, charcoal gray with minimal ornamentation, the Earth insignia visible on his shoulder. "Remember," Reed muttered to his crew, "they're not the enemy today." Admiral Krell led the Federation party, his tall Tarkashian frame towering over the humans. Behind him followed representatives from 3 other species, each regarding the human vessel with poorly disguised suspicion. "Captain Reed," Krell said stiffly, offering the formal Federation greeting gesture. "Your assistance was timely." Reed nodded, keeping his expression neutral. "We responded to a distress call. That's standard procedure for any Earth vessel." "Is that why you've been ignoring our diplomatic overtures for 15 years?" asked one of the Federation officials, a blue-skinned humanoid with gill slits on her neck. Lieutenant Emma Wells stepped forward before Reed could respond. As the ship's diplomatic officer, she had prepared for this moment. "Perhaps we can continue this discussion in the conference room," she suggested smoothly. "We've prepared refreshments suitable for all your physiologies." The Federation delegation followed, their eyes constantly moving to observe the human crew and the ship's interior. The Thunderchild's corridors were utilitarian but spotless, with none of the ornate designs common to Federation vessels. In the conference room, tension thickened the air. Wells noticed how the Federation representatives flinched when the door hissed shut behind them. They feared being trapped with humans, a reaction she had expected. "Your ship's combat capabilities are impressive," Admiral Krell said after they were seated. "We were unaware human technology had advanced so significantly." Reed smiled thinly. "We've had 30 years of isolation to focus on development. The First Contact War taught us many lessons." Several Federation officers shifted uncomfortably at the mention of that conflict. One of them, an insectoid being, clicked its mandibles in what Wells recognized as agitation. "You refer to a brief skirmish as a war," the insectoid said. "3 of our vessels destroyed, 2 of yours damaged. Hardly a conflict of historical significance." Lieutenant Wells saw Reed's jaw tighten. She knew his father had died in that brief skirmish. "Perspective matters," Wells interjected. "Those events shaped human policy for decades, but we're here to discuss the present threat, not past grievances." Admiral Krell nodded. "Indeed, the Void Armada has destroyed 17 Federation worlds and shows no interest in communication or negotiation. They simply consume and advance." The meeting continued as data was shared. Federation officers displayed holographic maps showing the Void's advance. The human officers exchanged glances as the strategic situation became clear. The Federation was weeks away from total collapse. "Your ship alone cannot turn the tide," Admiral Krell stated flatly. "Though your intervention today was helpful, we don't intend to fight your war for you," Reed replied. "But we can escort your remaining vessels to your central command. You need reinforcements, and we need more information on these Void entities." A quiet argument broke out among the Federation representatives, speaking in their native languages until Krell silenced them with a gesture. "We accept your offer, Captain," he said finally. "Though many in the Federation Council will question the wisdom of leading a human warship directly to our headquarters." Reed leaned forward. "Admiral, if we wanted to attack the Federation, we wouldn't need directions." After the delegation departed, Wells remained in the conference room with Reed. "They're afraid of us," she observed. Reed nodded, with good reason. "My father used to say the Federation never understood humans because they evolved on peaceful worlds. They never had to become predators to survive. And now they need predators on their side," Wells said quietly. Reed's expression darkened. "We'll escort them to safety. After that, Earth will decide whether this fight becomes ours." As the Thunderchild prepared to depart with the Federation convoy, both sides watched each other warily, reluctant allies bound together by a greater threat that neither fully understood. Federation ships, all that remained of their once proud defense fleet, followed the Thunderchild as it carved a path through contested territory. They had been traveling for 3 days, taking a route that avoided major void concentrations. Enemy patrol detected, announced the Thunderchild's sensor officer. 2 light cruisers at bearing 047. Captain Reed studied the tactical display. Can we slip past them? Negative. Their search pattern will intersect our course in approximately 18 minutes. Reed made a quick decision. Inform the Federation ships to power down to minimal life support. We'll handle this. The Thunderchild broke formation, accelerating toward the threat, while the Federation vessels drifted, appearing as little more than space debris to all but the most detailed scans. In the engine room, Engineer Tom Martinez worked frantically to modify the ship's emission profile. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he rerouted power through secondary systems. "This is crazy," he muttered to himself. "If I push these converters any harder, they'll melt." A voice interrupted his work. "Your approach seems highly inefficient." Martinez turned to find a Federation science officer watching him. The alien, Drex was his name, had been assigned as a technical liaison, but Martinez suspected he was really there to spy on human engineering. "If it's stupid but it works, it isn't stupid," Martinez replied, using an old human saying. Drex's face tentacles twitched with confusion. "That statement is logically contradictory." Martinez laughed, despite the pressure. "Welcome to human thinking. Hand me that coupling tool." Above them, the Thunderchild engaged the Void Patrol. Instead of running hot and loud with weapons, Reed had ordered a stealth approach. The ship drifted toward the enemy vessels with minimal power signature, appearing as a piece of space debris. "They've spotted us," the tactical officer reported, changing course to intercept. Reed smiled. "Good. Launch countermeasures." The Thunderchild suddenly ejected dozens of small objects, simple decoys that began broadcasting copies of the ship's signature. The void vessels hesitated, their sensors suddenly tracking multiple targets. "Fire main guns, target the lead ship," Reed ordered. The human vessel's railguns activated, sending hyper-accelerated metal slugs tearing through space. The lead void cruiser shuddered as projectiles smashed through its defenses, tearing open its hull to the vacuum. "Second target is retreating," reported the tactical officer. "They're sending out a wideband signal." "Calling for friends," Reed said grimly. "We need to move. Signal the convoy to power up and prepare for maximum speed." In engineering, Martinez felt the vibration as the main engines roared back to life. Drex watched with fascination as the human engineer made adjustments without computer assistance, seemingly by instinct. "How do you know which systems to prioritize?" Drex asked. "Your methods are unorthodox." Martinez grinned. "On Earth, we have a saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When something needs fixing, you use what you have. Your species evolved on a high-gravity world with extreme weather and dangerous predators," Drex observed. "The Federation calls such places death worlds." "Earth isn't so bad once you get used to it," Martinez replied, tightening a connection. "Though I suppose that's why we're good at surviving. We had to be." As the convoy regrouped and accelerated away from the encounter, Admiral Krell contacted the Thunderchild. "Your tactics were unorthodox," he admitted, "but effective." "We'll reach the Krell Passage tomorrow," Reed replied. "After that, it's a straight run to Federation Prime. If we can make it through the passage," Krell said darkly. "It's narrow, highly monitored, and likely watched by Void forces." Reed's expression remained confident. "Then we'll just have to be creative." As they approached the dangerous choke point, the Thunderchild's stealth systems failed unexpectedly. Alarms blared throughout the ship. "We're lighting up every sensor in the sector," the tactical officer reported with alarm. Reed's face hardened. "Get me Martinez. Now." The journey was about to become much more dangerous. The Thunderchild led the damaged convoy forward, its stealth systems offline after the emergency burn through the Krell passage. Multiple contacts emerging from the field called out the sensor officer, her voice tight. "Void signatures, at least 12 vessels." Captain Reed studied the tactical display, his face grim. "They've been waiting for us." 3 Federation ships huddled close to the Thunderchild their hulls still scorched from earlier skirmishes. The 4th Federation vessel limped behind, its engines damaged and struggling to keep pace. "We're trapped," said Admiral Krell, who had transferred to the human vessel after his flagship was crippled. Blood oozed from a cut on his scaled head, where he'd been thrown against a bulkhead during their last battle. Reed's eyes narrowed. "No, they just think we are." He turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all Federation ships. Tell them to follow our lead exactly. No deviations." The Void Armada emerged like shadows given form, their black ships absorbing rather than reflecting the distant starlight. They moved with purpose, closing the trap around the battered convoy. "Sir, the lead Void vessel is hailing us," reported the communications officer. Reed raised an eyebrow. "That's new. Put it through." The main screen flickered, revealing a figure shrouded in darkness. Its features were difficult to discern, but its voice crawled through the speakers like ice over skin. "Human vessel," it said, the words oddly stilted. "Surrender your technology. You are different. You will be studied before consumption." Reed met the creature's gaze without flinching. "That's a generous offer, but I have a counter-proposal." He nodded to his tactical officer. The Thunderchild suddenly accelerated, driving straight toward the center of the Void formation. The Federation ships hesitated only briefly before following. "All power to forward shields," Reed ordered. "Weapons free. Target their flagship." The human warship unleashed its arsenal, not just the railguns that had proven effective before, but something new. Missiles streaked from hidden compartments, each carrying payloads that detonated with a strange, rippling effect rather than conventional explosions. "Phase shift warheads," Reed explained to a stunned Admiral Krell. "They briefly push matter out of our dimension. Quite effective against ships that absorb energy." The lead Void vessel shuddered as its hull partially disappeared, atmosphere venting into space. The Thunderchild drove through the gap created, Federation ships in its wake. "Their formation is breaking," announced the tactical officer. "They're trying to regroup." But the victory was short-lived. A massive Void dreadnought emerged from behind a larger asteroid, its weapons already charging. "Evasive action," Reed shouted. The blast caught the Thunderchild on its port side. The ship shook violently, lights flickering. Crew members were thrown from their stations. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, shouted someone through the chaos. Admiral Krell pulled himself back to his feet, watching as Reed calmly issued orders despite blood running from a cut on his forehead. "Sir," called the sensor officer, "the trailing Federation ship is moving to intercept the dreadnought." On the view screen, they watched as the damaged Federation vessel deliberately changed course, accelerating toward the massive Void ship. "What are they doing?" Reed demanded. Krell's expression showed rare emotion, a mixture of pride and sorrow. "Captain Tellus is giving us a chance. His ship was too damaged to reach safety." The Federation vessel slammed into the dreadnought at full speed. The resulting explosion temporarily blinded their sensors. "All ships, maximum thrust," Reed ordered. "Get us out of this field now." As they broke free from the asteroid belt, leaving the confused Void forces behind, Reed turned to find Admiral Krell studying him with new eyes. "You know," the alien said quietly, I fought against humans in the First Contact War. I always believed your kind were dangerous barbarians. Perhaps I was only half right. Reed nodded grimly. We're dangerous when we need to be. Right now, that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Hull plates scorched and weapons systems cycling through emergency cooling. Before them hung Federation Prime, a massive space station surrounded by shipyards and defensive platforms. At least, that's what should have been there. Instead, they found chaos. The great station still stood, but many of its outer rings were dark or actively venting atmosphere. The shipyards burned, and void vessels swarmed like angry insects around the defenders. We're too late, Admiral Krell whispered, his scaled skin pale with shock. Captain Reed studied the tactical display. No, they're still fighting. Look. He pointed to where Federation cruisers maintained a defensive perimeter around the station's core. Your people haven't given up yet. Emergency transmissions flooded their communication systems. Desperate calls for aid, damage reports, and evacuation orders. The station's outer defenses had fallen hours ago. They won't last another day without reinforcement, Krell said. Reed's expression hardened. Then let's change the equation. Tactical. Identify the Void flagship. The officer worked quickly. Found it, sir. Large vessel, northeast quadrant of the station. It's coordinating the assault groups. That's our target, Reed decided. All hands to battle stations. Prepare for attack run. Admiral Krell stared at the human captain. You can't be serious. My remaining ships are barely combat-worthy, and you're proposing to attack their command vessel. Sometimes the best defense is an unexpected offense, Reed replied. While we hit their command structure, your ships can break through to the station with supplies and reinforcements. The plan was set in motion before Krell could raise further objections. The Thunderchild accelerated toward the heart of the Void fleet, while the Federation vessels made a run for the station's defensive perimeter. They've spotted us, reported the tactical officer. Multiple hostiles breaking off to intercept. Reed smiled grimly. Good. That's fewer ships attacking the station. The human warship plunged into battle, its remaining weapons blazing. Advanced targeting systems allowed pinpoint strikes that disabled rather than destroyed enemy vessels, creating obstacles that blocked pursuers. The Thunderchild moved like a predator, striking and shifting position constantly. On the bridge, Lieutenant Emma Wells monitored communications. Sir, I'm picking up transmissions from the neutral Arcturus fleet at the system's edge. They're observing the battle. Reed glanced at her. The Arcturans. They refused to help the Federation earlier. They might help now, Wells said. Permission to open diplomatic channels. Reed nodded. Make it happen. As Wells worked furiously to establish contact with the potential allies, the Thunderchild closed in on the Void flagship. Their surprise attack had carried them deep into enemy territory, but the cost was mounting. Multiple systems were failing, and damage reports came in from every deck. Sir, we've lost port thrusters and main weapons are at 30%, reported the tactical officer. Reed's face showed no concern. Auxiliary power to remaining weapons. Prepare for close engagement. The Thunderchild shuddered as enemy fire found its mark. Warning klaxons blared as the ship's integrity was compromised. Hull breach on Deck 7. Void boarding parties detected, shouted the security chief. Reed stood. Repel boarders. All combat-trained personnel to defensive positions. In the corridors of the wounded warship, human crew members grabbed weapons and formed defensive lines. Unlike Federation soldiers who relied on energy weapons, humans fought with a mix of advanced firearms and, when necessary, bare hands and improvised weapons. Engineer Martinez found himself trapped in a maintenance shaft with Science Officer Drex as Void troops approached. Stay behind me, Martinez told the alien, gripping a heavy wrench. This is most unwise. Drex replied, his tentacles quivering with fear. The first Void soldier rounded the corner, its dark armor absorbing the light. Martins didn't hesitate. He charged forward with a primal yell that would have made his distant ancestors proud. On the bridge, Reed received word that Wells had succeeded. The Arcturan fleet was moving to engage, convinced by her diplomatic skills that neutrality was no longer an option. "Sir," called the tactical officer, "we have a clear shot at their flagship's command center." Reed's eyes gleamed. "Fire everything we have left." A broken arm against his chest. Around him, his crew worked frantically to keep the damaged warship functioning. They had struck the Void flagship with everything they had, causing massive damage. But the Thunderchild had paid a terrible price. "Life support failing on decks 3 through 6, reported a junior officer, her face streaked with soot. "Hull integrity at 28%. Reed nodded grimly. "Evacuate those decks. Reroute remaining power to weapons and shields." The ship shuddered as another Void blast found its mark. Sparks showered from an overhead conduit. "Sir," called the sensor officer, his voice suddenly changing. "New contacts emerging from hyperspace at bearing 180. Reed's heart sank. If these were Void reinforcements, the battle was truly lost. "Identification?" he asked, preparing for the worst. The officer's expression transformed into one of disbelief. "Sir, they're human ships. Earth Defense Fleet signatures, at least 20 vessels." A cheer erupted across the bridge. Reed moved to the main view screen, watching as human warships poured into the system. Sleek destroyers, massive cruisers, and at their center, the dreadnought Indomitable Asterisk, pride of Earth's fleet. "The cavalry has arrived," Reed murmured. Admiral Krell, who had remained on the bridge during the desperate fight, approached Reed. "You knew they were coming." Reed shook his head. "No, but my emergency beacon activated when our systems were damaged. Earth must have been monitoring our situation." The newly arrived human fleet moved with practiced precision, forming attack groups and targeting the scattered Void forces. Unlike the Federation ships with their elegant flowing designs, human vessels were angular and aggressive, bristling with weapon systems designed for overwhelming force. "All Federation vessels, this is Admiral Jones of the Earth Defense Fleet," came a new voice over the communication system. "Form up with our Screen Group Delta. We'll handle the offensive operations." The Void Armada, which had seemed unstoppable for months, suddenly found itself outmatched. Human ships deployed tactics that the enemy hadn't encountered before. Coordinated EMP bursts to disable Void systems, followed by precision kinetic strikes. "The Arcturan fleet is engaging as well," reported Lieutenant Wells, a rare smile crossing her tired face. "They're following the human attack pattern." Reed watched as the tide of battle shifted. The Void forces began to withdraw, their once orderly formations breaking apart under the combined assault. Admiral Krell observed the battle with wide eyes. "Your people fight like a single organism. The coordination is unlike anything I've witnessed." "We've had practice," Reed replied simply. "Earth's history is full of war. We learned to be good at it." Hours later, with the Void Armada in full retreat, Reed stood in the Thunderchild's medical bay. Around him, human and Federation wounded received treatment side by side. Engineer Martinez sat on a bed, his arm bandaged, describing something animated to Science Officer Drex, who listened with obvious fascination. "Captain," called a voice. Admiral Jones entered the medical bay, her uniform pristine despite the battle. Reed attempted to stand straighter despite his injuries. "Admiral, thank you for the timely rescue." Jones smiled slightly. When Earth's most decorated captain disappears responding to an alien distress call, people notice. The Defense Council voted unanimously to follow your trail. Her expression became serious. "You took an enormous risk." "A necessary one," Reed replied. The void is a threat to everyone, humans included. Later, in Federation Prime's Grand Council chamber, human and Federation leaders gathered. The massive circular room hummed with dozens of species discussing the battle and its implications. The Federation Council elder rose to address the assembly. Today marks a historic turning point. The Void Armada has been driven back, thanks to the courage of the Thunderchild and the intervention of humanity's fleet. Admiral Krell, now wearing formal regalia, approached Captain Reed. "My people have a saying. The stars remember those who change their patterns. You have changed the pattern of our galaxy, human." Reed gazed out a viewport where Earth ships patrolled alongside Federation vessels. "Let's hope it's for the better." In the darkness beyond the system, a damaged void ship limped away. Within its command center, a shadowy figure transmitted a message to a distant recipient. "We have encountered a new species. They are called humans. Proceed with caution."